Hey everyone, Gabe Kwakyi here with another quick lecture on burnout. So I'm going to today cover off on 10 burnout myths and my perspective and insights that I've gathered through research and firsthand experience in coaching to help provide a perspective of what makes this a myth and what is more realistic. So, yep, burnout myths. And I'm actually going to read through a section of my book where I have about seven of these myths that are captured. So I'm just going to talk through those, and then I'll add a few other myths that I've gathered since publishing the book. But number one, burnout is not just a one-time, or it's not necessarily just a one-time thing. Burnout can certainly reoccur, just as we can break a bone more than once. In fact, there is actually a model called the 5 stages of burnout, in which the final stage is repeated or habitual burnout. So that's number one. Myth number two, it doesn't necessarily last only a couple of weeks or a month at the most, depending on the severity of the burnout and what your recovery process looks like. Burnout can last for many years, or many months, or even years. And definitely a big myth here, if anybody were to think this. While burnout can and likely does include some mental influences, burnout is also a physical state as well. And it is heavily influenced by the effect of chronic stress on your body, on your brain, and the way that your thinking is happening. So very, very critical to dispel any notion that burnout is just a mental thing. I've just got to push through it and figure it out. Burnout is something that really affects your body. And so that's part of what makes it so sinister or challenging, is because you've got to address the stress component if you're at a later stage of burnout before you can really start to address the mental decision-making, belief systems, habits side of things. So burnout does, from the body standpoint, affect the way that you operate and think. Burnout is also not only caused by excessive workload. So burnout can arise from being expected by others or yourself to take on an overload of work, but also burnout can happen in situations where work would be manageable if your mind wasn't dominated by cynicism and pessimism. Also, burnout can and does happen outside of the working world, such as in cases of parenting burnout or caregiver burnout. And so it's not just overly workload related. So one of the three components from the Maslow burnout inventory, which is probably the gold standard in burnout measurement, is cynicism. And so if you are doing a job where you're not really working too many hours, but you just feel awful going to work, you feel like you have no agency, no control, you have no connection to the work, it just doesn't connect with you in any way, and it actually makes you feel negative about the time you spend on work and at work. Then even if you're not working too much, you can also come into a phase of burnout. And burnout, you can burn out even if you do love what you do. It's influenced not only by the way that you feel about your work, but also the exhaustion that accumulates in the course of what you're doing and working. So if the last myth is that too much work without it, if you're not working a lot, you can't burn out. This myth is that, if you don't have any cynicism about what you do, that you can't burn out, and that's not the case. Of course, as talked about before, it's not just it's a body issue as well. And so even if what you love is, even if you love what you're doing, you can burn out if you're not taking breaks, if you're not allowing your body to recover from the accumulation of stress that comes from working many hours or consistently, then yes, you can still certainly burn out. So not only caregiver burnout or parenting burnout, but entrepreneurs especially, even if you have a passion for what you do, it may even pull you to work way more than your body can really sustain for a period of time, in which case, of course, you can burn out. And the last couple from the book here. So high performers are not immune to burnout. The reality is that this could not be further from the truth. So it's not a matter of just will or mind over matter. High performers are actually one category of people that are most susceptible to burnout, because you're in this case able to and willing to push yourself past your limits, and likely have an achievement or growth-oriented mindset, which kind of disconnects you from the feeling of your body, getting in touch with, am I physically more tired than I have been in recent weeks and months, and getting worse. Maybe I should take a break. So last one here, from the book, Changing Your Job or Taking Time Off Will Fix Your Burnout. Now, granted, leaving your job can be one of the key actions that supports your recovery, and reduces the likelihood of a future or routine burnout, especially if your environment is a toxic one. But uh, it's not the case that doing so or taking time off or changing your job will fix the burnout. Part of burnout has its roots in your belief systems and your kind of mental habits and the way that you navigate your life and the way that you see yourself and your self-identity. So this means if you have narratives in your mind of unsustainable sense of lacking, denial of the reality of your approach to work and how that affects your body and brain, or a sense of insecurity, continuous insecurity, then yeah, you may have a temporary improvement if you make a change like this, but eventually that root is going to regrow, or can regrow into burnout later on if you're not going to the root and addressing that, which in the first place caused you to get to a point of burnout. So that's it from the book here. Now, a few other bonus myths. You can't fix, well, a you can improve the symptoms of burnout with self-care alone. And depending on the type of burnout, you can really make some good progress, and maybe you can even make a good recovery if there's not those roots of burnout that have dug into your self-perception, identity, your belief systems. But again, those are some of the things that can cause burnout. And if you don't address those and you just address the symptoms and you get massages, you eat well, you drink more water, you get more sleep, then the roots can regrow into burnout later on. And especially if cynicism or this feeling of lack of meaning in your life was part of the reason that you burned out, then yes, self-care is not going to address the full picture. It addresses exhaustion criteria and maybe your productivity criteria, but not that core way of seeing yourself in the world. And another myth is that it's not all your fault for becoming burned out. There are decisions, that we make along the way that bring us towards or away from burnout. And so certainly this is not to say that none of this is an outcome of decisions that you made, but there's a lot of reasons that are above and beyond any one of us individually that have caused burnout to be so pervasive in modern society. Western, especially US society, is very comparison oriented. There's so much polarization. There's a huge focus on work just in general. If you study some of the reason for why work is so core a part of American society, some people attribute it, I think it's to the Calvinistic or kind of religious intense work ethic. We've got, of course, the American dream was if anyone can make it. If you just work hard enough, then you can make the American dream. America is a melting pot for people and immigrants from all over the world who came to try to make it, various other points. So a big part of the reason why so many people end up burning out is because of the systems that we're in, the culture, the society, the cultural norms, values, and mores and those kinds of things. So burnout is bigger in the end than just one individual alone, but it is important to do the things that you as an individual can control, and reduce the likelihood that you burn out, even if the system that we're in is sometimes not conducive to avoiding burnout. But it is a myth to think that becoming burned out is entirely your fault. So also, burnout is not all bad. This can be a bit this concept can be a bit tricky to kind of see and really engage with if you're in the midst of a burnout. But in my book, I talk a lot about the benefits or the positive outcomes or the productive or maturation outcomes that can come from an experience as significant and intense as burnout. If you go through a burnout, then it's a sign that something needs to change in the way that you're in your work, in the way you approach your work, and likely in the way that you approach your life, because work is one part within your overall life. So burnout in this sense is, yes, it's a negative health, mental and physical health outcome, but burnout is actually an opportunity for us to mature, for us to reflect on what got me to this state. How can I avoid getting to this state again? What changes do I need to make in my life, in the way that I'm thinking about myself and my life? And I just did an interview with someone, a friend, a couple of days ago, where he actually pointed to his experience of burnout years later, that he was in a sense glad that he went through that, because it caused him to wake up, and he made some very significant changes in his life. And now he's just so much more fulfilled. He's very he feels like it was a great opportunity that he took advantage of and moved forward and matured in life, became more self-aware, and became, through that challenging experience, equipped and armed with so much more wisdom and knowledge. But it did take going through that to get there. So this kind of ties in also to the philosophy of things, where there's not, the philosophy is there, or one of the philosophies is that there's no good or bad in life, that it's just a continuous journey, where the bad ends up leading to the good, and the good ends up leading to the bad. So this is something that, as you're going through your recovery, as you start to, or as you address the exhaustion and the physical side of stress, you can start to think more about the mental side and what this means for you in your life. And if you can start to reflect on this point, what's not bad about this? What might actually be a beneficial opportunity here? What has my body and the decisions that I've made leading me to this point, what does this mean for me moving forward? What could this mean for me? If I were to really make the most out of this experience and not just recover and keep doing the same thing, what would that look like? What would that mean? So if you want to go deeper into this, get the book. Really hope it's helpful. I've heard that it is for the folks that have read it so far. And yeah, best of luck in your recovery journey. You are not damaged goods. You can recover and make it through this. There is a path out, and no matter how bad it feels right now, you absolutely can get to a stage again where you're feeling normal again, or maybe even better than you were before. Going through 2 burnouts myself, I know how difficult it can be at the nadir or the low point of things, and I thought I would never recover. I thought I'm just finished. And now here, several years later, that couldn't be further from the truth. So there was a myth that I was creating and believing in my own head in the moment. And I think a lot of us are creating these myths because we feel isolated from the kind of world as we're going through this really difficult and trying experience. But stay encouraged, keep learning. This is a great thing that you're doing right now in watching this video to move yourself forward in your recovery or your burnout prevention journey. You can do it. Stick with it. I'll see you in a future video.